Hello humans. Today I actually ended up buying my first from new Leatherman. I have had a couple Leathermans over the years. The only one in my collection right now is actually my Leatherman Micro, whatever. But all of those I ended up picking up either secondhand or from antique stores or in trades, that kind of a deal. So this is my first time ever buying a new Leatherman, and I'm actually kind of excited about it. So as always, I'm going to start with the outside packaging. Very, very simple, very, very tech sphere-esque with just the Leatherman logo on the front. We have French on this side. Same deal, Leatherman logo, but with some extra details. I do like the recycling and some of the different plastics that's made from. That's kind of cool. What is multi-purpose? We are prepared to solve problems for the extended and unexpected. This means equipping you with the highest quality set of tools in the easiest to carry form factor, allowing you to always be ready for anything. Learn more at leatherman.com. Okay, that's pretty nothing. So this is the Signal in Crimson. This is the Signal in Crimson, Leatherman Tool Group, Portland, Oregon, yada yada. I think this looks like it was actually made in the US, which is, yeah, it is made in the USA. So it's made in Portland, Oregon, which is pretty cool. Okay, plain cardboard, burn it, recycle it, do whatever you are going to do. And then we have this, oh, it's that plastic. Okay, but this is your maintenance and your warranty, so this is actually a pretty useful thing to have. And it folds out like a fucking roadmap. Phenomenal. And it's in every language you could ever imagine. Amazing. So you have a limited 25-year warranty, and you can learn more about it at leatherman.com. There we are. Bunch of different, oh, okay. So it tells you all the different ways to use your different Leatherman depending on what model it is. Surge, signal, locking/unlocking the latch. Is that literally the only detail? Accessing the ferro rod. Okay, crunch. Okay, cool. So it does give you some tips and tricks as to how to use it and a whole ton of stuff on maintenance that I am not going to read. This could be useful if you're new to knives, that kind of a shebang. Oh, that's recycled plastic. That's kind of cool. Here we have our Leatherman nylon belt pouch thing. Sheath made in China. It's like a hard nylon, probably with some cardboard or something like that in there. It's fine. It's nothing spectacular. It'd be nice to have like a little Velcro patch so you could put a pin or a bead or whatever, but it's fine on its own. Nothing special. I do like the Leatherman snap, though. I think that's kind of cool. Mostly just because I don't see stuff like that very often with the hollow snap. Here we have the signal itself. And is that a cardstock or recycled cardboard? You have a knife on you, don't you? Yeah. Oh, it's a cardstock. So it's all cardboard. You can burn or recycle all of it, which is pretty cool. All right, and here we have our signal. This is what I would describe as being kind of like a survival multi-tool, just because it has a whole bunch of outdoor emergency style tools to it, which can definitely have its benefits and its drawbacks. Okay, 45 degrees north, 22 degrees west. I'm assuming that's going to be like the Leatherman headquarters maybe, or something similar. I'm not entirely sure, but that is going to be my guess. I'm not entirely sure where to start. That's going to be useful. This is going to be used as a bottle opener, I guarantee it. And the hammer, we have I'm going to assume that's going to be a 1/4-inch driver. We have a 1/4-inch driver, and that might actually be an 1/8-inch driver on the other side. Let's find out. It's not. Okay, I'm not entirely sure what size this side. What size that side there is going to be. but it's not going to be an 1/8 inch driver. Here we have our knife blade, partially serrated, useful if you're the type of person who cuts through a lot of like webbing or packaging, liner lock. On the other side, we have our saw blade. That, I imagine, could have some uses. I don't know. Are they doing the same thing that Victorinox does? I think they are doing the same thing that Victorinox does, where the entirety of the saw blade itself is actually tapered towards the spine, which just means that the teeth are the widest point, which means that the curve's a little bit easier to use, which just means that when you cut through a material, you don't end up with as much pinching, which is quite a nice thing. It's not an end-all be-all, but it can be quite a nice thing. I am kind of excited to use this this saw. Okay, and that might be it. We've got this butt plate thing, which is designed for hammering. Hold it kind of like this. You can get a good amount of force, and then when you're near the bottom, hold it like that. I mean, it's a hammering tool. Humans have been using them for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Hundreds of thousands of years. Pugh. This is, what are you? Is this a, hold on. I think this is actually serration stone, like for sharpening serrations. It has a little bit of a grit to the outer edge of it, so I would be willing to bet that this is for sharpening your serrations. I'm not going to waste time doing that right now, but that's actually kind of cool and could definitely prove to be useful. And you can also just use it on the straight section just by using the flat part. So that's kind of cool. I also do like the way that that was attached, because it's being held in by the same lock that holds the internal tools open, which is kind of like a modified backlock kind of a deal, which is pretty damn cool. We have a pocket clip. Pocket clips are always useful. And then, yeah, it's got some oil on it. Gross. We have a pair of needle nose pliers, which I like needle nose pliers. Needle nose pliers are used for a lot more things than any other type of pliers. I'm surprised that they're technically not considered to be like the standard pliers. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We have a pair of needle nose pliers. They seem to be fairly robust. And then we have a pair of replaceable wire cutters / notchers, probably, or just snips. They're the sort of stepped ones that you can cut through thicker material with, which is pretty nice. Something I will say that is absolutely in this, in particular, the signal's positive, is that you have this retention near the bottom, which is really good for grabbing like the bottom of your hand. If you're particularly trying to squeeze on something, that could prove quite nice. I feel like this should be removable or should do something, but I don't know what. Okay, internal tools. For our internal tools, we have a reamer / I'm assuming that's supposed to be for sewing. It's sharp, but it doesn't have a blade edge like the Victorinox version has, which means it'd be a little bit of a difficult tool to use for reaming. Not the worst in the world, but a little bit of a difficult tool to use for reaming. Lockback though, which is nice, and you can definitely use it to punch holes if that is something you need to do. What other tools do we have here? How am I supposed to access these? Probably from back here. Has to be a better way than this. Oh no, you do have a nail nick. I just, for some reason, can't reach you. This is our can opener. Again, the blade does not feel very sharp or sharpened at all, but it would probably work. It would also probably work as another bottle opener, to be perfectly honest. But it doesn't feel sharp. I will have to use this to try and open a can, see how well it does for me. Again, lockback design on all of these internal tools. And then finally, definitely not one-hand accessible, if that is something that is important to you. We have our leatherman flat bit. I think you can get different bits for this, but this one here comes with a 2D Phillips and a 2D flat. Snaps in place good. Good retention there. And it's definitely usable. I just don't know if I personally would have a use for it. And then on this side, I think that the only tool is it's right here. So can I sort out how this works without having to rely? Okay, so there's a back spring back here. Oh, okay, so it can be as simple as pull back and pull you out. Pull back on this. Oh no, push it forward. Doy. Aha! Alright, let's do something dumb. Anywhere on this, it's going to be crisp enough. Not on you. On the saw, maybe? Ooh, yeah, right back here on the saw. Yeah, there we go. Can definitely throw a spark. Some kind of a waxy finish on it, but once you get past that, it will definitely throw a spark. I will, of course, try to start a fire with it and do that whole shebang, but I'm not going to do it right now. And then that. And I'm imagining just kind of close it and it'll sort itself, maybe? This is either going to break something or work. Let's find out which. It's going to break something. Okay. It's going to have to go back in. That, I imagine? Yeah. There we go. So you have to put that front in first, and then it fits in just fine. Is there a better way of... I'll read the instructions later. Out of the box, I'm going to have to loosen off this side here a little bit. That's a little bit stiff, but it's really not too bad. The detent to hold that open is quite strong, which is definitely on the positive side. Let's give the blade a quick test. This is just paper. Okay, the serrations are definitely tearing more than cutting, but the plain edge section is cutting just fine. Yeah, the plain edge section is cutting just fine. The serrations... they'll work, it just takes a little bit of coaxing. Yeah, definitely sharp. This is generally a problem that I have with serrations on production knives, and I fully understand why this is the case, but it still is the case, and it still annoys me. Serrations on production knives are generally done on one side of the edge only. As you can see, it's pretty well flat on that side, and it has the serrations cut in on this side, which means that it's offset, and especially when you have a combo blade that has serrations and a flat section, the actual cutting bevel moves over at the end of it by like half of the thickness of the what's it called? Thinness behind the edge. It moves over by half of that, going from the serrated section to the non-serrated section, which I just find annoying, and it's definitely, I find it noticeable in cuts. I don't know what everybody does, and some people swear it's not an issue, and they can swear as much as they want. I think it's an issue, and I've always found it to be an issue. So until production knives figure out how to do serrations coming in from both sides, which custom knives do, I have seen some custom knives with it, but until I start seeing consistently production knives that have that done, I am going to complain. Do we have our blade steel? We do not. It could be 420 HC. I wouldn't be surprised. It could also be 154 CM. I know they use that in some things, but I will figure that out for the second section for you guys. Let's try out a rubber test, a rubber cut. This is not going to perform well. Yeah, definitely a lot of resistance there. I'm not going to blame, I don't think it has anything to do with the coating that's on the blade to blacken it. I just think that this is a fairly thick blade with not very much height to it. Like, there's not enough room for the blade to reach its maximum thickness, which is going to prove to be difficult. It's also a flat grind. So it's just, it was always going to be have a bit of a time at this particular test. The serrations actually handled cutting through the rubber a lot better than the rest of it did, which is not super duper surprising. Serrations are generally pretty good at that. Yeah, I mean, it'll do it, but holy crap, that was a lot of resistance, which, I mean, it's what you'd expect from it, right? Now for the fun part where I get to stab things, always a good time. Oh wow, that was actually... Okay, that's kind of... I think a lot of it just has to do with how small the actual tip is, because it does have a fairly acute tip, but also how heavy the rest of this is. Stabbing with this is surprisingly nice. I'm surprised by how easy that is. I expected that to be a lot harder given the geometry of it, but sometimes interesting things happen in this world. I do think for a right-handed person in particular, the blade is offset to the correct side. Sometimes it'll be offset towards the inside of your hand. I personally don't like that because I feel like I have to work around the handle to get into a cut when I'm processing wood or something like that. I don't like an offset blade, don't get me wrong, but if it has to be offset, I prefer it to be offset towards my fingertips because I feel like that makes it more accessible in use. But the blade is absolutely not the showstopper in this particular knife. It is the pair of pliers, and initial impressions, I like the pliers. I haven't actually carried a plier-based multi-tool before, like just full stop. I have never carried one, which may seem a little bit odd, but like I work in an environment where I always have access to pliers. And in the forge, I wouldn't want to use these anyways because I will destroy the heat treat on anything that I use and any finishes that it has in the whole 9 yards, right? So I am interested in seeing how much of my daily life I actually end up using a pair of needle nose pliers. I suspect, like most things, it's going to be more than I think I do. But yeah, I am definitely excited to give this guy a bit of a test. And so yeah, I'll carry this for a little bit. I'll get back to you with more completed thoughts. This is definitely... Ooh, how did that happen? Sorry, this saw just kind of poked out on me, and I'm not entirely sure if it got caught on my hand or if I did something weird, but I'm going to keep an eye out for that too, because that should not happen. Weird. Anyways, yeah, like I said, I'll play with this guy for a couple of weeks, and I will come back with some more sort of fully formed thoughts. In the meantime, well, there's no meantime. And we are back. So I've been playing with this guy on and off for a couple weeks. If you've been here before, you've heard the spiel, but it's been in and out of my pocket for close to a month now, just over 3 weeks. And I have to say, I am quite a bit of a fan of this, but more than anything else, it's kind of, when I carry this, it gives me the opportunity to change what my EDC looks like, which I think is super, super cool, and I definitely do believe to be a benefit, right? Like playing with your EDC, trying out different things, seeing how different things feel is absolutely a benefit. So in order to explain why this is different, first I have to explain what I normally carry. I like carrying at least one locking blade and one non-locking blade, along with a multi-tool. Now the multi-tool and the non-locking blade are typically together. Lately I've been carrying this Victorinox right here. I do not remember the model off the top of my head. I bought it secondhand, but it's probably the X Farmer maybe? I don't know, but I've been carrying either this guy for this really, really nice big chunk of scissors, or I've been carrying my walnut, my Victorinox walnut hiker with the saw, because I really love that saw. I will get into saws later. And this covers my non-locking blade that I can give to people, pull out in public, whatever I need to do, because a non-locking blade is considered to be a lot less threatening. And then in addition to that, I like to carry a locking blade just for bigger tasks, if there's a little bit of twisting, or if I'm just a little bit more concerned, tougher material, stickier material, whatever, I want something that locks out. So typically I do a Victorinox and a locking knife of some description. However,
because the Leatherman has a locking blade suitable for those harder tasks, I get the opportunity to do something I don't get to do all the time, and that is EDC a non-locking knife in addition. This is an Old Coast 3-blade slip joint knife. Really, really like it. This thing's super fun. You will get a video on this at some point, but I picked it up secondhand, so you don't necessarily get a video about it right away. And that's just been a super, super fun experience for me. I actually do like having my quote-unquote main knife being a non-locking knife from time to time, obviously depending on what I'm doing. If I'm going to go out and process a bunch of wood, that's a very unfortunate thing, but in general, I don't mind that. So yeah, that's been really, really good, and I do actually quite like that. I didn't use the majority of the tools on here. The most used tools for me out of any multi-tool typically are like the tweezers in a Victorinox, because I get splinters, metal splinters all the time. I guess the toothpick, I use that a fair amount, and the saw are like my big three out of a multi-tool. All the other tools are kind of, I need them for a specific thing, and it always sucks when I don't have the multi-tool that has a specific tool that I need on me, so there is that. I guess I also end up using the the can opener quite a bit too. I actually really like a good can opener. I know I'm just tangenting all over the place right off the bat here, but I know a lot of people think that the can opener in particular is something that could be removed fairly easily from modern Victorinoxes. I strongly disagree. I actually really like the can opener because it's very, very easy, especially if you're running late in the morning, just to throw a can of soup in your lunchbox or grab it on the way out the door, and then you don't end up having to buy something expensive for lunch because even fast food's freaking ridiculous right now, right? And it's a good nutritious meal that if you carry a Swiss Army knife, something with a decent can opener, you can open up pretty much anywhere and then dump it in if your office place has bowls, you can just dump it in a bowl, nuke it. If your office place doesn't have bowls, you're either eating cold soup or figuring it out, I guess. I guess you could also just bring your own bowl. Yeah. So I like having a can opener, but I understand that not everybody does. Anyway, that's sort of my side tangent on multi-tools. One of my side tangents. I'm probably going to get into more. But point being, this has most of my most used tools, which is a very, very valuable thing. So let's start out with the saw. Okay, this is a good multi-tool saw. I'm going to start off with what's really, really good about it. First thing first, as you can see, the back of the blade is significantly thinner than the front of the blade, which means that when you're sawing, you don't end up in a position where your kerf is the same size as your blade and you get stuck a whole bunch. So it's actually really, really nice. Victorinox does the same thing. Super, super slick. I think that that is absolutely the way to do it. What they did in terms of the teeth setup is a little bit interesting. It's sort of a combination of a crosscut and a rip cut saw. So it has sort of that off-centered crosscut design where they're all a bunch of little knives that if you're cutting across your grain, crosscut, cross. If you're cutting across your grain, you get a lot of that added slicing potential, which is really nice. But it's also kind of a rip cut saw on the pull stroke, because you can see it has those 90-degree sort of teeth edges to it, which does make it a fairly efficient rip saw. I think it suffers a little bit in the crosscut saw category for that. I personally prefer the Victorinox style of just having a pure crosscut saw. I think I use a crosscut saw a lot more in a multi-tool, and I think that having a crosscut saw, using a crosscut saw as a rip cut saw, in my opinion, works a lot better than using a rip cut saw as a crosscut saw. Not everybody agrees with me there. That is completely a matter of personal opinion, and I strongly encourage everybody to figure out their own thoughts on the subject. But as far as I am concerned, I would prefer to have a pure rip cut saw on a multi-tool. Now, this is a good compromise, and don't get me wrong, this is 85% of the way there, right? For general use, I actually think that this is really, really nice. However, if I need to split something along the grain, I would typically rather just baton through it, or if it has to be sawed, again, I'm perfectly happy using a cross-cut saw to do that, right? So for me, the lost efficiency on the crosscut isn't worth it, but not everybody's going to agree. That's completely a matter of personal opinion. And this thing's biggest benefit is the fact that it actually locks out, which is really, really nice. So it's a really good saw. Like, just because this isn't my absolute favorite, don't mistake that from me thinking that it is a bad saw. I think that this is a really good saw. It's just not my personal favorite. We have the blade, which is 440C stainless. Other tools are 420HC, which is, they're both decent budget steels. I mean, this is like 185 Canadian dollars, so at that price point, it would be nice to see something a little bit more premium, but I kind of get it, right? There is a lot of tools here. There's a lot of stuff that you have to get right. The costs of developing a multi-tool are higher than the cost of developing just a pure folding knife. So 440C, I can live with that. I'm perfectly happy with that. It's easy enough to sharpen. You do get a sharpening stone with it. I didn't play with the sharpening stone very much, but near as I can tell, it works perfectly fine, and very valuably, it actually, you can sharpen your serrations with it because it does have that nice point, so it does have a serration sharpener built in. Definitely something I approve of, especially for something that's touted as like an outdoor survival multi-tool. Having a way to keep your blade sharp, very valuable. On the other side, I actually missed a tool during the initial part of this. I don't like the way this gets taken. So, in addition to having our fire steel, or ferrocerium rod, which is definitely really cool, this is also a survival whistle. This is going to make a really loud noise. Definitely a benefit. I mean, hopefully you never need to use one, but in the event that you do need to use it, it is a lot better to have one and not need it than need it and not have it. So I will take it every single time. Other than that, the main part of this being a pair of needle nose squared needle nose pliers, I actually quite like. I think that this is kind of cool, and the replaceable cutters are so valuable. Like, a lot of the time, a multi-tool is basically done when the cutters get used up, because if you use the cutters, you want this to have a pair of cutters, right? So the second that the cutters stop cutting effectively, the whole multi-tool is basically useless to you. If you never use the cutters, then it doesn't matter if they're replaceable or not whatsoever to you. But if you use the cutters, the multi-tool is dead the second that the cutters stop cutting properly. So having replaceable cutters, super valuable. Massive, massive props to Leatherman for that. It works really well. It doesn't have a spring or anything like that, so you kind of gotta manipulate it with your hand. But honestly, I mean, it works great. Like, this is a good pair of pliers. It does everything you need a good pair of pliers to do. I know people who use these instead of MIG pliers at work, just the way things are. 1/4 inch driver box end wrench is what they call it on their website. I mean, it'll do it. It's fine. Here's the thing. Typically speaking, if you have a bit set, it's like, oh yeah, I gotta talk about that later. Typically speaking, if you have a bit set, it's kind of attached to a screwdriver or something like that. So for me, this is just kind of a poor man's alternative. But if you have one of those, like the Zippo inserts, that's also a screwdriver. I really need to get one. I actually think they're really cool. But if you have one of those, you just need more torque for whatever application. This does give you a decent amount of torque. So there is absolutely a benefit to having it there. And again, right, a 1/4 inch bolt isn't necessarily an uncommon thing to encounter out in the wild. Wild being like suburbia or whatever, but it's not an uncommon thing to encounter in your day-to-day life. So to that end, I actually do think that it is pretty good. The smaller one on the other side, the 3/16, I don't see as much of a use in, but I'm sure some people are going to consider this to be super duper valuable. The tools aren't difficult to access. In theory, this can be done one-handed. I don't find it easy to do one-handed, but in theory, it can be done one-handed. The reamer and awl tool, it works fine. You can get a decent scraping with it if you're using it for woodworking. I wouldn't necessarily want to use the awl just because it's so broad, but That's going to be to each their own. The can opener works. I would have appreciated it being a little bit sharper. As it is, it will open a can. It's just a lot more of a fight than I think it should be, in my opinion. So to that end, you know, it's fine. Solid middle of the road, 5 out of 10. Lock back on here is actually pretty good. Screwdriver. Here's what annoys me about the screwdriver. You can't close the tool with the screwdriver out, which makes perfect sense. Like, I understand how and why you wouldn't be able to, but it just makes the screwdriver a little bit awkward to use, in my opinion. You end up like T-handle, I guess, pistol driver, whatever. So it's not bad. The fact that you don't really have very much bit storage and you only get like one double-sided bit in there is kind of frustrating, but it's definitely not world-ending. Backlock on the tools is quite good, and I do definitely appreciate that. Should probably not lose this. Also, I do think that they gave you a good choice of bits. You've got this sort of flattened Phillips and a flathead, both good choices. Oh, piss off. Okay, here is, in my opinion, the biggest drawback of this multi-tool. Both of these open, and something I ended up noticing quite a bit, when you go to close it, typically one side or the other, there, you end up, and you can manipulate this to get your desired action, so on and so forth, but the fact that this is possible is a little concerning to me. It would be really, really nice. I don't necessarily know how I would resolve this issue, probably by putting, you'd almost want it to be like a captive D-pivot just for the pliers, and then like a separate washer pivot that's held in with this right here. So this would go into both, and then the D would just manipulate the pliers, and then this wouldn't be able to move. Might be the way to do it. I'd have to take a look under the hood and see how all that fine tuning is going on, but the fact that that can open when you're trying to close it is a little bit concerning, and it did annoy me multiple times, which is just frustrating. This is a lot of a thing to have in your pocket. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it is absolutely a lot of a thing to have in your pocket. Let's do some size comparisons nice and quick. I'm not really going to be comparing it to other multi-tools, largely because I don't have very many multi-tools in this thing's class. But here it is next to a Wee Banter and a Civivi Chevalier. And I mean, if you want to treat this just as a knife, I would consider this to be a medium-sized knife. It's very heavy for a medium-sized knife, but you get a lot more than a medium-sized knife out of it, so I can't be that critical. Yeah, it fits comfortably between those two sizes. In terms of the actual like grip that you get, it's not that dissimilar in maximum height to the Wee Banter, which is pretty cool. And it is absolutely a hand-filling grip. Like, this thing, it's big enough and it's wide enough. If you need to bear down on something, this will give you the space that you need. Here it is next to a Buck 110 and a Zippo lighter. That's actually, there we are. Yeah, so I mean, it's not a small thing by any stretch of the imagination. Whew, my apologies. Got the hiccups or something today. It's thick. This thing is thicker than the Buck 110, right? Like, it is absolutely a meaty hand-filling boy. I'll do it up against the Zippo too, because why the hell not? Significantly thicker than the Zippo. A good bit thicker than the Buck 110. It has a very thick blade for the height of the blade, but it doesn't necessarily have the thickest blade in the world. All of my tools are all over the place. Here it is. Okay. Nope. Throw that off. So our actual blade thickness is, That is actually kind of thick. Basically 125 thousandths. Which for blade height, like a maximum blade height of, what is this? Oh, it might be, yeah. Basically 0.6 of an inch maximum blade height. It's not a lot. I mean, it's not nothing, don't get me wrong. Like, it is more than half an inch, but that's a pretty aggressive angle. So this thing is not by no means a slicing champion, which you wouldn't necessarily expect it to be, but you know. Using the hammer, meh. I don't use a hammer very often other than forging, which hopefully in the next couple of weeks, you guys will get a video of me trying to do some forging with this guy, which should be pretty fun. But when you're starting out a nail, you don't necessarily want to hold it like this. You can jab yourself in the hand, so you kind of grab it, bonk, 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 bonk. And then as you get down towards the base of the nail, you can bonk, bonk, bonk normally. If you're breaking walnuts or whatever, you can just, works pretty well. Honestly, I think that that's like my biggest use case for it is like cracking open food. Yeah, it's fine. It's personally, I don't like a hammer that has this grippy texturing to it. I think that that was a little bit, no, I think that was very unnecessary. I would have preferred just a flat, smooth section on the bottom, but it has a little bit of, it's not even waffling. It's literally just jimping, for lack of a better term. Actually, it's the exact same jimping that they put back here on the backlock. Prime design, guys. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's there. It does work. If that is something that is important to you, it will absolutely function. And in a survival situation, having another bonky thing is definitely useful. And you don't need to find a suitably sized rock. So there is that. In terms of recommendability, I actually do think that this is quite recommendable. It's a nice tool. It's well made. It will serve you well. And the biggest thing is that it's not a difficult tool to maintain or upkeep, right? Like anything here can be taken off and replaced. It might take a little bit more effort to replace some things and to make sure that everything is right with them, but I'm sure I haven't checked in on this community at all, to be honest. Like, I know Leathermans have a big community, but I have no clue what that big community is necessarily doing. I'm sure modders have like different tool packs that you can get for the inside of this, and it's all well, fine and dandy. It's not for me personally, but you know what? It does work, and working is what I need it to do. So yeah, if there's a tool here that you don't need, I would check online and make sure that you can swap out. But I cannot foresee that being a difficult thing to find or do. Being able to get new teeth, or not teeth, but a new cutting section for your pliers, super duper valuable. Replacing the blade, super duper easy. Replacing the saw, super duper easy. It's a very easy to maintain and upkeep object, which is absolutely to its benefit, right? Like, this is something you could very conceivably keep running for 20, 40, 30, 30 is less than 40, 60 years without too much difficulty, as long as parts remain available, right? So yeah, I definitely do think that if you're in the market for a pliers-based multi-tool, the Leatherman Signal is a good option. It's not necessarily the most bang for your buck option, even out of Leatherman's lineup. I think that there's better, not necessarily better, but there is more bang for your buck depending on what tools you need. But if you're looking for the complete package with a little bit of customizability just in order to express yourself better, the Signal has some of the most color options out of anything in the Leatherman shop, which does definitely have a benefit. So yeah, it's a little pricey, but for what it is, it's really good, and I definitely do think that there is lots of good reasons to get one. Stay safe and have fun out there. Peace.